Number 3.
This isn't my story, it's my father's. When he was young, still in grade school, he had a friend named Joe. He and my dad, they were best of friends. My dad, my aunt, and my grandparents, they were traveling out of state to visit my great-grandparents 1 week over the summer. They almost brought Joe along, but there simply wasn't enough room. This was a trip they made frequently, and they had a habit of stopping at my great-aunt's house to stay a night as a kind of halfway point. My dad and my aunt shared a guest room, and my grandparents, they slept in a separate one. I should also probably share that my dad has always been an extremely heavy sleeper, and from what they tell me, he used to sleepwalk into my grandparents' room and say random things that he would never remember the following day. This time, however, was different. My dad actually woke up in the middle of the night. This was a bit unusual, as he would never even wake to his alarm clock most mornings. In fact, he still doesn't. Anyway, he sat up in bed and quickly realized that there was someone sitting at the foot of his bed. The person was clearly not an adult, as they were too small. He wasn't alarmed at first, believing that it was my aunt. She was younger than him and easily frightened due to her age at the time. After rubbing his eyes, however, he can hardly believe it, but it's Joe. His friend, that was supposed to be 2 states over right now, was holding his left arm as if wounded and rocking back and forth, staring straight at my dad with dark, sunken eyes. Now alarmed and a bit puzzled, my dad whispers,
"Joe, how did you get here? What's going?"
Joe interrupted.
My arm! It hurts! Please can you help? I need help, please!"
Believing his friend was in danger, my dad said,
"I'll go get my parents. Stay here, I'll be right back,"
and ran past Joe and across the hallway into my grandparents' room. He woke up my grandmother and began rambling about his friend and what he saw. She's a very sweet and loving lady, but she hated the frequent midnight intrusions, so she was a bit aggravated. She told him that he was dreaming and to go back to bed. My dad tried again, but caught a bit of a slap to the cheek and a stern,
"I said, go back to bed, now."
Completely defeated, he returned to his room. Joe was gone, and my aunt was sleeping happily in the bed beside his. Maybe he was dreaming, but he didn't sleep much afterwards that night. Why had he seen that? What exactly did he see? Whatever it was gone now. My father forgets about it for the rest of the week. Things go by normally, and they return the following weekend. They left early enough to make it in 1 day. They couldn't stop at my great-aunt's house because she would be out of town. They got back with a little bit of daylight left. So, my dad asked permission to play outside until the streetlights come on. He was given permission, so he ran to Joe's house. Excited to be able to play with his best friend again, he knocks and Joe's mother answers.
"Can Joe come and play?"
my dad asks. Joe's mother replied,
"Oh, you mustn't have heard. Joe actually broke his arm after you guys left. He won't be able to hang out for a little while. You'll see him at school tomorrow though."
The next day, he sees Joe on the playground, his arm slung in a cast. It was his left arm. My dad had only then realized that what he saw couldn't have been a dream. Could it? It's either that or one hell of a coincidence. To this day, my dad cannot make sense of it. He tells this story whenever the subject of paranormal comes up. It's the only story like it I've ever heard, and I, being the kind of person who likes to look at these true scary stories online, thought it was odd. So I looked it up and found that what he saw was a doppelganger, a bearer of ill omen taking the form of the person whose bad fortune it tells. To see or encounter the doppelganger of a friend or relative foretells a minor tragedy about that person, and to encounter your own foretells your demise, according to the legend anyhow. If not for this story and the fact that my dad told it, I wouldn't believe any of it. Knowing this story though, thinking about it, sends chills up my spine.
Number 2.
This happened when I was newlywed and just had my first child. Being a young couple and fresh out of college, my husband and we were living with my mother out in the country. My father had passed several years ago and she was alone. She was actually my grandmother, as I was adopted as an infant. She was getting older and could use the company and a hand since it was just her in a large house with lots of property to keep mowed. It was a good arrangement, allowing us to save money to buy a home, and me being a first-time mum, I was nervous about how to do things. One morning, I decided to go into town to do some shopping for baby products. My son was only 2 months old and my mother was off at her senior centre group that she attended. My husband was at work, so I packed up my diaper bag and got the baby in the car seat and off we went. We were out for about an hour. We had an older couple as neighbours who we have known since my father built our home. Our neighbours were elderly, the wife was in a wheelchair and her husband always potted around the yard. Before I go on, here's some insight about my family home. For as long as I can remember, we have always heard bumps and footsteps in rooms where there was no one. We had a 2-story home and my room had always been upstairs, and now that I was staying there with my little family, we converted the entire upstairs 2 rooms into a living room and bedroom for me and my husband and son. Whenever we would hear things, my mum would often joke that the resident ghosts were at it again. On this particular day, I got home and I was busy taking out the baby so I could get him settled in his crib and I could come back down for the rest of the groceries. I saw our neighbour who was tending to his flowers and I waved hello. He gave me the oddest look back and slowly waved at me. I didn't think much of it since he was older and I figured he was just getting a little senile, so I went inside and put the baby in the crib. I came out and grabbed a load of packages and glanced over at my neighbour. He was standing there just watching and he had a look almost as if he had seen a ghost, but I didn't pay too much attention. I had to get my groceries in before the baby woke up. I took that load in and came back for the final load of groceries, and it was at that moment that my neighbour called to me. He was at the fence and said,
"Melissa, come here for a minute."
I went over to the fence and asked him,
"How is your wife?"
He said she was napping and then proceeded to ask me,
"How long have you been gone?"
I was thinking to myself, has he lost it or what? So I asked,
"Do you mean just now, or how long I've been gone from the home altogether?"
He then said,
"How long were you gone to the store?"
I said,
"About an hour. Why?"
He then said,
"Don't get alarmed, but I came out here about 20 minutes ago, and I was tending my roses when I looked up to your window upstairs, and I saw you looking down. I waved hello, but you never waved back. You just closed the curtain, and then, a few minutes later, you pulled into the driveway."
My heart raced and all I could think of was my baby and someone in my home. So I ran into the house, dropping my groceries, and ran up the stairs 2 by 2 to check my son. I looked around and no one was there. So I walked back downstairs and checked the house room by room. Empty. No one was there but my son and I. My neighbour came to my door and he was holding my groceries and called for me to open the door. I went to the door to let him in and I told him thanks. He put the bags down on the kitchen table and said,
"I didn't mean to alarm you, Melissa, but I've seen you grow up and I know I saw you in that window."
I told him that it was okay and thanked him for the help. He saw himself out and I just stood there. Now, I've always been a horror buff and I love folklore, especially scary folk stories and urban legends. I have heard of fetches and doppelgangers and knew well enough that if you come face to face with your fetch, your death, it's near. I was a bit shaken, but okay. I saw that as a warning that something in my life had to change, or if not, I would be dead. Sometime later, after years and years of physical abuse from my husband, I knew I had to leave my marriage as the abuse, it was escalating. I chose to escape with my kids one night and got onto a Greyhound bus and never looked back. Many times I would be smothered by a pillow by him, gasping for air, seeing my life flash before my eyes. And on many occasions, I would remember that day when my neighbour saw my fetch. I believed that I had to do something because if not, I would be dead. So I left and hid for years until I felt it was safe to come out of the shadows. Number 1. We lived in a bungalow type house together with my parents and my older brother. It's a nice house with enough space for the 4 of us and located in a quiet neighborhood. Yet something seems odd in our lovely house. One time, my brother asked me how I quickly got to my room. It was obviously an odd question, so I asked him what he meant. He said that we passed by one another at the front door as if I was about to head outside, and I apparently nodded in acknowledgement as he greeted me. But I was inside my room the whole time studying for an exam. On another occasion, at around 8 in the morning, my mother was furiously knocking on the bathroom door for my brother.
"How long are you going to be in there?"
she asked.
"I'm late for work."
I asked what was happening and my mum told me that my brother went into the shower an hour ago. Just then, my brother came out of his room with messy hair and just in his boxers.
"What's going on?"
he asked. Clearly, my brother just woke up. My mum and I looked at each other with confusion. After 10 seconds, she snapped out of it and reached for the doorknob. It was locked. My mum then headed back to her room to look for the key for the bathroom. I can clearly hear sounds of water inside the bathroom. My brother walked to my side and I quickly filled him in to what was happening.
"Are you sure it's not Dad in there?"
I jokingly asked.
"Your father already left for work."
She groaned as she starts to open the bathroom door.
"He wanted to get some paperwork done as it's starting to pile up."
All 3 of us huddled in front of the door as it opens. There was no one inside, but the shower, it was still running. This gave us all the creeps, but I still wasn't convinced. After this whole situation, these events, they began happening occasionally. Mum would see Dad in another part of the house, only to turn up elsewhere. Dad sees my brother jogging outside, yet he's just slacking inside the house. But I personally hadn't witnessed it for myself until one occasion. My brother and I are about to head out one afternoon. I'm about to head out to buy something, and my brother is going to this party. My parents were at work, so no one was around. My brother kept asking me all day to go with him. I really don't like the company of his friends, so I refused.
"Maybe I should take your doppelganger with me,"
he jokingly said. I laughed and had this brilliant idea. Well, I thought it was brilliant at the time. I headed towards the kitchen to grab a mug. I placed the mug on top of our dining table and said in the creepiest voice I can muster,
"If there is something in this house, you will move this mug for me."
My brother then made this "oh" sound and then laughed. We then prepared to leave. I checked around the house before leaving. Everything's locked, no stoves on, no unnecessary electronics on, etc. We then headed to the bus stop. Along the way, we made small talk. Arriving at my stop now, he gave one final attempt.
"You sure you don't want to go?"
Finally fed up, I said,
"I'll think about it."
Then I left the bus. I went to the store and I got what I wanted. It was a newly released video game. Not wanting to go home, I hung out at this coffee shop for a while. After a couple of hours, I got tired of browsing the internet using my phone and I headed home. I arrived home at 9 p.m. As I headed towards the front door, I'm surprised to see our living room lights on. I knocked and my brother opened the door for me. Confused now, I asked,
"What happened to the party?" "It didn't turn out to be what I expected,"
he begrudgingly said.
"I got bored and left."
He then proceeded to sit on the couch and turned on the TV. I sighed and then headed to my room. I passed by our dining table and noticed the mug I placed earlier. I chuckled as I reached for the mug and turned my head towards my brother.
"See, there's no such thing as..."
I stopped. The mug, it was warm. I didn't know why, but I was immediately overwhelmed with fear. I quickly turned back towards the mug and saw that it was filled with coffee. I turned my head towards the living room. and I see the back of my brother's head, still watching TV. I was about to ask him if he filled the mug when my cell phone rang. Still looking towards the living room, I answered the phone.
Bro, you're not going to believe this. Your crush is here. I told you, you should have come.
It was my brother's voice. I briskly walked towards my room without looking back and quickly locked myself inside.
But I thought you got bored and went home.
I asked.
What are you talking about? Anyway, you can still catch her if you want to come.
My brother said this and then hung up. I didn't leave my room until the next morning. I told my parents and my brother what happened, and even during the time I'm telling my experience, I didn't trust any of them fully, but was eventually convinced that it was my real parents and my real brother. Shortly after this, my parents placed the house on the market and we moved out. G'day mates, it's be.busta here. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video guys. And you know, these stories reminded me of a family I knew that had twins. They named their kids Juan and Amal, and I guess you could say that if you've seen Juan, you've seen Amal. You have to admit that one was alright guys. Thanks again to the Hive members that bravely shared their story for us all here, and I hope you guys are all doing really well. For the chance to have your story featured in a video, you can send your story to my email, which is in the description below. And as always, keep them coming guys, as this channel relies upon your stories to continue. Also guys, please do me a favor and just state in your email what your story is about in the description, and also provide me with a short written statement of consent, just so that I can be above board with everything. And also remember to tell me in the email if you would like to remain anonymous, and please change any names if you don't want particular names to be shared. As always guys, it would be awesome if you could like, share, comment and subscribe if you're new. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for updates throughout the week. You can also catch me on my second channel, all of which have links in the description below. Thanks again for always tuning in guys, for all the love and support, and I'll see you mates in the next one.